Welcome back to the deep dive, the place where we slice through complexity and really try to extract the knowledge you need to be better informed right now.
And today, we're tackling something really interesting. It's a bit of a paradox, actually, sitting right where ancient philosophy meets, well, our modern obsession with optimization.
Yeah, it's like they're pulling in opposite directions.
Exactly.
Yes.
We're doing a deep dive into the Stoics' diet on food, fitness, and self-control.
Okay, that title alone, the Stoics' diet, sounds almost like a contradiction, doesn't it? I mean, our world today is just obsessed with optimizing the body. You've got biohacking, tracking every single macro, constant fitness metrics.
Oh yeah, the physical self is huge now. It's tied up with success, happiness, everything.
Right. But then you look at the Stoics, and they famously, classified all physical things, health included, as merely indifferent, which, if you care about your health, sounds like, well, like it's telling you not to bother.
It really does set up this friction point, doesn't it, between our 21st century values and this 2,000-year-old wisdom. If we're trying to live a rational, resilient life using Stoic ideas, where does our physical health actually fit? Our diet, exercise, what's the deal?
So that's the mission for today, to figure that out.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
We need to synthesize what the sources actually tell us, specifically how the virtue of temperance self-control applies to maintaining our physical health, which, as you said, the Stoics called a preferred indifferent. The Greek term is progmena.
A preferred indifferent. Okay, for anyone new to Stoicism listening, that term itself sounds, I don't know, a bit weird, like a backhanded compliment or maybe just confusing. If my health isn't actually good in their system, why should I even bother, say, watching what I eat?
That nuance is absolutely key.
Uh-huh.
Health, for the Stoics, is not an end in itself. Only virtue is truly good.
And virtue means things like wisdom, justice, courage, and this temperance we're talking about.
Exactly. Those are internal qualities. The Stoics believed these virtues were the only things that truly contribute to your ultimate happiness, or flourishing, what they called eudaimonia. So having great health doesn't automatically make you a virtuous person.
And conversely, lacking it doesn't make a wise person miserable, as long as their mind, their reasoning is sound.
That's the core idea. Your inner state, your virtue, is independent of your physical state.
Okay, so if it's not good, why call it preferred? I mean, I definitely prefer being healthy over being sick. That feels like a preference, like a value judgment.
It is a value judgment, but of a different kind. It's preferred because, well, the body is the instrument the mind uses to interact with the world. Think of it like that.
Okay, like a tool.
Right. A healthy body generally supports a rational and virtuous mind better. It's naturally preferred over sickness because it usually makes performing your duties, acting justly, being courageous, doing what needs to be done easier, less impeded.
So it's like trying to get somewhere in a car that runs well versus one that's constantly breaking down.
Precisely. The car itself isn't the destination or the purpose of the journey, but a functional car certainly makes getting there smoother. The Stoics saw health in that practical light.
So the body is this practical tool, helps us practice virtue, but it's not the prize itself. Okay, so if we're focusing on applying this, we're looking at how we use rational self-control temperance to maintain this vital but still secondary tool.
Exactly. We're moving past just the theory and getting into the nitty-gritty practical application of Stoic philosophy to our physical lives.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we dive into diet specifics, we really need to nail down this fundamental Stoic value system. What exactly does it mean when they call health an indifferent, and why is that distinction so crucial?
Right. To really get the Stoic view on the body, we have to be clear about their value system. They divided things into three neat categories: good, bad, or indifferent.
Good is internal the virtues, like wisdom and courage. Bad is also internal the vices, basically the opposites of virtues, like foolishness or cowardice, and then everything else.
Everything else, exactly. And this category of indifferent is massive. It covers basically our entire external and physical reality. Life itself, death, health, sickness, pain, pleasure, physical strength, beauty, wealth, poverty, fame, social standing, all of it.
So none of those things are inherently good or bad in themselves.
Nope. They're neutral. They're just the stage or the raw material upon which virtue or vice can act. So getting sick, for example, is an indifferent event. How you choose to respond to that sickness, maybe with patience and resilience, or maybe with, whining and despair, that's where the virtue or vice comes in.
But hang on, if they're all neutral, how do we get back to this preferred indifferent idea? Because like I said, I prefer health. That feels like putting a positive spin on it, even if it's not ultimate moral goodness.
You've absolutely nailed the critical distinction there. While the theoretical Stoic sage, the perfectly wise person, could supposedly achieve happiness no matter what, healthy or sick, rich or poor, the rest of us, the people still learning and progressing.
To progressors, right?
Right, the Procopton. We naturally feel an innate pull towards certain states. It's just part of our biology. Our nature as human beings. We're wired to prefer life over death, pleasure over pain, and yes, health over sickness.
So a preferred indifferent, the progmena, is something that doesn't make you morally better, but it still has what the Stoics called, was it selective value
Oh,
or utility?
precisely. It has selective value. Health is preferred because it's generally according to nature. It allows us to function as humans are meant to function, and crucially, it tends to aid rational choice and action. Wealth might be preferred over poverty because it can give you more opportunities to help others or support good causes.
And this is the big, but having these preferred things doesn't actually make you a better or happier person deep down, and not having them doesn't make a virtuous person unhappy.
That is the absolute non-negotiable line for the Stoics. Possessing preferred indifference doesn't guarantee happiness, and lacking them doesn't preclude it if your core judgment, your virtue, remain sound.
I think this is where someone listening today really needs to pause and absorb that. Because if my main goal in life is, say, achieving peak physical fitness, and I actually manage it, the Stoic framework says I'm not fundamentally happier or morally superior to someone dealing with chronic illness, provided that person is facing their illness with virtue, like courage and patience.
Exactly that. The second your sense of well-being, your self-worth, becomes dependent on having perfect health or a certain body type or avoiding pain, you've violated the core Stoic principle. You've handed over your inner peace, your eudaimonia, to external circumstances.
Which are fundamentally fickle and outside our complete control. We all get sick eventually, we all age.
Right. So the moment you define your inner state by the condition of your outer body, you're setting yourself up for inevitable anxiety, disappointment, and fear of loss.
So taking care of my body through diet and exercise, it's a practical thing. Done for function and making life smoother, not as some kind of spiritual quest or moral achievement.
It's about maintaining the tool that allows your rational mind to act effectively in the world. Now let's look at Epictetus. He was a former slave, became a major Stoic teacher, and he really hammered this distinction home, sometimes quite harshly.
Yeah, he didn't pull any punches, did he? I remember reading quotes where he calls the body encumbrance, this little body, or even this corpse. That feels almost deliberately shocking, especially compared to our modern fitness culture.
It's definitely a strong rhetorical tactic. Epictetus is trying to force a sharp, dramatic line between the temporary, decaying physical casing the body and the enduring true self. He wants his students to grasp the difference between what they are and what they merely have.
And that true self, the core identity we need to protect above all else, is what he called volition, or prohairesis in Greek.
Correct. Your prohairesis, your faculty of choice, your reasoning center. It's the part of you that receives impressions from the world, evaluates them, and makes judgments. Epictetus argued this was the only thing the gods, or Zeus, gave us that is absolutely fundamentally ours, completely unimpeded and unconstrained by anything external, including disease, injury, or pain.
Wow. He has that famous line, doesn't he? Something like, "You are not flesh or hair, but volition. If you keep that beautiful, then you will be beautiful."
That's the one. Incredibly powerful, isn't it? It completely shifts the focus of self-improvement away from the mirror, away from the weighing scales, and onto the quality of your thoughts, your judgments, the very architecture of your mind.
We're defined by our choices, not our cholesterol levels.
That's the essence of it. But here's where, I sometimes wrestle with this a bit myself. If Epictetus goes so far as to call the body a corpse, doesn't that make it really hard to justify spending time and effort on fitness or healthy eating? I mean, why bother maintaining something he deems so fundamentally unimportant?
That brings us right back to the core paradox of the preferred indifferent, yeah. The key isn't seeing the body as important versus unimportant in some absolute sense, but understanding its relative importance.
Relative to what?
Relative to volition. Epictetus's point, as I understand it, is to treat the body as completely unimportant compared to the supreme importance of your rational mind, your prohairesis.
Okay, so the emphasis is on the comparison. It's not saying neglect your body.
Exactly. That would be irrational because health is preferred. It helps you function. So neglecting it would actually go against nature and reason. Maintaining the body then becomes an act of temperance itself, an exercise in rational control and doing your duty to keep your tools in working order.
Ah, I see. So if being reasonably healthy allows you to perform your duties, better be a better parent, worker, citizen, then it's rational to pursue that health. Yeah.
Right, but the instant that pursuit of health becomes an obsession, the second it starts compromising your rational control, maybe causing constant anxiety about food, making you dependent on supplements, or just consuming all your mental energy, that's when you've lost sight of the true Stoic goal. You've elevated the tool above the user.
The body is the ship, volition is the captain. The captain needs a seaworthy ship, sure, but shouldn't spend all day polishing the brass if it means ignoring the navigation charts and heading for the rocks.
Great analogy. Okay, so if the body is this preferred indifferent, this tool we need to maintain rationally, how do we apply that rational control, that virtue of temperance, to something as basic and often troublesome as food and our appetite?
Well, if the main Stoic goal is inner freedom, self-sufficiency, ataraxia, tranquility, then getting a handle on our appetites is absolutely crucial because appetites, by their very nature, tend to enslave us.
How so?
They immediately tie our sense of satisfaction to external things, food, drink, possessions, sensations, and often they pull us towards luxury, towards things that are hard to get or easy to lose.
And when you talk about appetite, food is probably the most universal, constant, and necessary example we deal with every single day.
For sure. And Musonius Rufus, who was actually Epictetus's teacher, had a lot to say about diet. He was known for being, well, pretty hardcore in his commitment to simplicity.
Uncompromising is a good word for Musonius. I remember he called gluttony and craving fancy gourmet food most shameful. That's strong language.
It is. And the shame for him wasn't just about, social disapproval. It was a fundamental character flaw because it revealed a serious lack of rational self-mastery. If you can't control what you put in your mouth, how can you possibly control your judgments or actions in more complex situations?
And he defined gluttony really simply, didn't he? It was just a lack of self-control regarding food. Full stop.
Exactly. And he saw two immediate negative consequences flowing from that lack of control. First, it wrecks your health. Why? Because humans, left to their own devices, consistently choose food that's pleasant. Rich, sweet, fatty, complex flavors over food that's primarily nutritious and simple. We go for the instant gratification. Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all are, to some extent. Second, and maybe more importantly for a philosopher, it ruins the soul by creating dependency. Musonius insisted that anyone studying philosophy needed to actively cultivate good character, and that meant being visibly self-disciplined, courteous, and crucially, being in control of his tongue, stomach, and sexual appetites. Control over basic physical urges was foundational.
So he wasn't handing out like a specific Stoic meal plan, no keto or paleo rules here. It was much more about adopting a certain mindset, a radical shift towards choosing food based on function, on need rather than taste or luxury.
Absolutely. His recommendations were for the simplest, most basic foods available. Things like bread, vegetables, legumes, maybe some fruit and water. He saw choosing plain, inexpensive, easily accessible food as a form of training for resilience.
Oh. Well, if you can be genuinely satisfied and functional on a simple meal of lentils and bread, you're independent. You don't need fancy chefs, imported ingredients, or a big income to sustain yourself. You're free from the tyranny of marketplace, in a sense. You can thrive almost anywhere, under almost any circumstances.
That focus on simple living as a pathway to freedom and resilience, it's interesting because it wasn't only the Stoics saying this, right? Their big philosophical rivals, the Epicureans, kind of landed in a similar place regarding diet, didn't they?
Yes, that's one of those fascinating overlaps where different philosophies arrive at similar practical advice, even if their reasons are totally different. Epicurus, remember, was focused on maximizing pleasure, but specifically the pleasure of ataraxia, which means tranquility, freedom from pain, and mental distress.
So if pleasure, or at least avoiding pain, was their goal, why would they advocate skipping the delicious, luxurious foods? That seems counterintuitive.
Because, for the Epicureans, complex, luxurious diets ultimately create more pain and distress in the long run. They argued that getting used to a simple and inexpensive diet supplies all that is needful for health, and, crucially, avoids future pain.
What kind of pain?
The pain of dependency and anxiety. If you train yourself to need, say, expensive wine or elaborate meals to feel satisfied, you then live in fear of not being able to get them. What if your fortunes change? What if there's a shortage? That creates anxiety. The simple diet, however, makes you fearless of fortune because your needs are easily met.
So the end result looks similar. Eat simply, but the motive is different. The Epicurean does it to minimize future anxiety and maintain tranquility. The Stoic does it to cultivate the virtue of temperance, demonstrate rational self-mastery, and ensure their freedom isn't compromised by cravings.
Exactly. But both schools clearly recognize what we could call the trap of luxury. The ancient sources are very explicit about this. If you become accustomed to, let's say, needing champagne every night, you develop a fear of losing access to it.
Or worse, you might compromise your values to keep affording it.
Precisely. You might find yourself flattering powerful people you don't respect, or taking on work you find meaningless or unethical, all just to fund those expensive tastes. Your craving for luxury ends up dictating your choices and compromising your rational freedom, your autonomy.
And Cicero, who was observing Roman society at the time, he commented pretty bluntly on the physical results of all this overindulgence, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Cicero paints this really vivid, almost grotesque picture of people enslaved by their appetites. He describes them sweating, belching, and being stuffed with food as if they were fattened oxen. It's a depiction of physical discomfort, inefficiency, and frankly, a lack of dignity.
Contrasting that with the health and vitality that comes from moderation.
Right. For the Stoics, overconsumption literally makes you a less effective human being, a less efficient, rational agent. You're weighed down mentally and physically.
You know, what's fascinating here is the Stoic critique of diet isn't really about calories or macronutrients or hitting your protein target like we obsess about today. It's not even primarily about vanity. It seems fundamentally about avoiding enslavement to desire.
That's the core of it. If your pursuit of, say, perfect fitness or following a really complicated, expensive diet becomes an obsession, if it requires costly supplements you stress about affording, or hours of complex meal prep that cause anxiety, then that pursuit itself, even if aimed at health, might actually be violating the deeper Stoic goal of rational freedom and tranquility.
So the first question isn't, is this food optimally healthy according to the latest study?
No. The primary Stoic question is something more like, am I choosing this food because my rational judgment determines it best supports my ability to function and fulfill my duties? Or am I choosing it because my non-rational craving is demanding a particular pleasant sensation? Temperance is that constant conscious act of choosing based on reason, not impulse.
Choosing the sustenance that serves the mind and body's function, not just the craving that pleases the palate for a moment.
Exactly. And this need for constant monitoring, this mastery over impulse, extends directly into how the Stoics viewed our emotional life, which they saw as deeply intertwined with our physical state.
That's a really important link. You can't really talk about Stoic well-being, even physical well-being, without getting into how they understood and managed emotions. They didn't see them as just, fuzzy feelings. They saw them as tied directly to physical reactions and, crucially, to our judgments.
Absolutely. This takes us right into the heart of Stoic psychology. Their view of negative emotions, which they call passions or pathy in Greek, things like intense grief, crippling fear, consuming lust, overwhelming anger. The Stoics argued these weren't just natural, unavoidable responses to life. They believed they were actually unhealthy judgments we make about events.
Unhealthy judgments. Why unhealthy?
Because they fundamentally cloud our reason. Passions, in the Stoic sense, narrow our focus, make the perceived problem seem way bigger and more threatening than it objectively is, and they trigger these often irrational and unhelpful physical responses.
They distort our perception of reality.
Precisely. And Seneca, writing specifically about anger in his essay On Anger, makes this connection between the mental judgment and the physical body really explicit.
Yeah.
He didn't just describe anger as a feeling, he called it a disease of the body characterized by swelling. He pointed to the obvious physical signs, the flushed face, the rapid breathing, the tense muscles, the distorted voice.
So the passion isn't just in the mind. Its destructive force is immediately physical. It's bad for your health, not just your character.
Exactly. It disrupts the body's natural state.
Yeah.
But then the obvious question comes up. Okay, if someone cuts me off in traffic, my heart instantly starts pounding. If I hear a loud bang, I jump. Are those automatic? If emotions are voluntary judgments I make, how do we account for these seemingly involuntary physical reactions?
Right, the knee-jerk responses.
This leads us to a really critical distinction the Stoics made. It's between these full-blown passions, pathophes, and what they called first movements.
Propathea.
First movements. Okay, what are those?
These are the initial, purely physiological reactions that happen before conscious thought or judgment kicks in. They're involuntary.
Like the heart racing, maybe getting butterflies in your stomach, sweating when you're startled, that momentary jolt of fear from the loud noise.
Exactly those. The Stoics saw these as natural built-in physiological alarm systems. Remember, the body is a preferred indifferent, and it's naturally programmed for survival. These first movements are part of that programming. They're morally neutral. They aren't good or bad because they happen to you without your mind's consent. They are not considered emotions in the proper Stoic sense.
Okay, so this is the crucial moment, the window of opportunity for applying Stoicism. The goal isn't to somehow stop your heart from ever pounding faster because you probably can't.
Right, that's unrealistic. The goal is to stop your mind from assenting to the judgment that usually follows. The judgment that says, my pounding heart means this situation is terrible, catastrophic, and I must react emotionally.
You've got it. For a first movement to escalate into a full-blown passion, your mind, your proherasis has to step in, evaluate the situation, make a judgment about it. This insult is an attack on my honor. This potential danger is unbearable. And then agree with that judgment, assent to it, and decide to act on it.
Seneca talked about this distinction too, right?
Yes, Seneca clarified that a true passion is defined by its follow-through, its conscious endorsement. He said something like, feeling a momentary urge to lash out when insulted is just a first movement. But if you judge that lashing out is the right and necessary response, and you consciously choose to do it, then it becomes the full passion of anger, which he said involves assault. It requires your consent.
Okay, let me see if I get this. If I'm walking down a dark street late at night and my skin starts to crawl and my heart rate picks up, that's just the first movement. The body's automatic alarm. It's neutral physiology.
Correct. Unavoidable.
But if my mind then jumps in and judges, oh my God, this feeling means I'm definitely going to get attacked, I'm terrified, I need to run screaming, and then I actually panic. That panic, the full-blown terror, is the passion of fear, which theoretically I could have controlled by not assenting to that catastrophic judgment.
That's precisely the Stoic analysis. You control the assent, that internal nod that says, yes, I agree with this interpretation of events. This feeling means what I think it means, and I must react accordingly. This is why mastering this process, controlling assent, is so fundamental. It's why Epictetus said the first topic of philosophy, the most essential starting point, is mastering our desires and aversions.
Getting control over what we want and what we try to avoid.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal of mastering that first topic is achieving emotional health, resilience, and that inner freedom we talked about.
Freedom from being jerked around by our reactions.
Right. The aim is to reach a state where you don't fail to get what you truly desire,
Right.
which should only be virtue, and you don't experience things you truly want to avoid, which should only be vice. This leads to freedom from distress, anxiety, and inner conflict or impediment. And how do you achieve this? By understanding and internalizing the necessary principles.
Necessary principles.
These are the core Stoic truths that, as Epictetus put it, launch a person on the way to becoming immune from distress, anxiety, passion, and impediment, and becoming free.
And the most necessary principle of all seems to be, again, constantly hammering home that distinction between what is truly up to us, our judgments, our choices, our volition, and what is not up to us, our bodies, our health, external events, pain, pleasure, other people's opinions.
That's the bedrock. If you mistakenly assign ultimate happiness-determining value to anything outside your direct volitional control, like demanding that you never feel pain, or that you always have perfect health, or that your body looks a certain way forever, you are absolutely guaranteed to live in anxiety, because those things are not fully yours to command.
But if you limit your true desires, the things your happiness truly depends on, only to maintaining your inner integrity, making sound judgments, acting virtuously, then nothing external, no physical ailment, no unexpected shock, no insult, can ever truly harm your core self or disrupt your fundamental happiness. And this perspective, this framework, becomes absolutely indispensable when you inevitably have to deal with physical suffering.
Right, because we've established that physical pain, illness, all that stuff, it falls into the indifferent category. Maybe preferred to avoid, but still indifferent. But let's be honest, that doesn't make it feel any less unpleasant when it happens. Even the most dedicated Stoic philosophers still had to deal with the reality of getting sick, getting injured, aging.
Absolutely. Theory is one thing, practice is another. And Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, gives us some really practical advice here. He was dealing with immense pressure, running an empire, constant wars, and apparently he suffered from chronic health issues himself. The historical sources suggest he was rarely in peak physical condition. So he knew what he was talking about from personal experience. What was his technique?
He advocated for a very structured, almost scientific, cognitive approach to dealing with pain and physical discomfort. It's often called decomposition.
Decomposition, like breaking it down?
Exactly. Instead of reacting to the big, scary emotional label, we slap on pain like this is unbearable agony. Marcus advised intentionally breaking the sensation down into its component parts, asking yourself objectively, what is this really?
Stripping away the story you tell yourself about the pain and just looking at the raw data?
Precisely. He instructs you to interrogate the experience. Don't just say, my back hurts. Analyze it.
How would that work practically if I have, say, a headache?
Okay, instead of just thinking, ugh, this headache is killing me, you decompose it. Ask, is the pain sharp or is it dull? Is it throbbing or is it a constant pressure? Where exactly is it located? Is it just behind the eyes or all over? Is the intensity steady or does it come in waves?
You're basically becoming a scientist observing a phenomenon.
Right. The goal of this detailed analysis is to realize that the pain isn't one single thing, but it's composed of many different aspects. You dissect the overwhelming feeling into smaller, more manageable sensory inputs.
And by doing that, you're kind of distancing yourself from it. You're using your rational mind to observe the sensation instead of just being submerged in the subjective experience of suffering.
Exactly. You reassert the dominance of your reason over the raw physical event. You might find that when you break it down, each individual component, the dull ache here, the slight throbbing there, is actually more bearable than the vague, terrifying label of terrible headache. And analyzing it also reminds you that it's a temporary event, a changing sensation, not a permanent defining feature of your existence.
So Marcus is teaching you to contain the sensation. Acknowledge the physical input in your head, perhaps, but actively choose not to let that sensation metastasize into mental despair or anxiety in your core self, your volition.
That's the essence of it. You cordon it off. But that's a very focused inward technique. The Stoics also had a powerful technique for broadening your perspective outwards, way outwards, to help manage adversity, including physical suffering. This is the famous cosmic perspective, or the view from above.
Ah, yes. Zooming out. Big time.
Big time. Both Marcus Aurelius and Seneca use this frequently in their writings. The exercise is to mentally step back and contemplate the sheer vastness of time and space. Imagine looking down on the entire Earth from a great height, like an astronaut.
Seeing continents shrink, cities become specks, maybe even seeing human history unfold.
Right, from that immense vantage point where entire wars look like ants squabbling, where mountains are just wrinkles, your own personal health crisis, your aching knee, your temporary illness. It shrinks down to its true, relatively insignificant dimension within the grand cosmic scheme.
It puts things in perspective, to say the least.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your physical suffering becomes just one small event happening right now, in this tiny corner of the universe, during this fleeting moment in infinite time. It's not some grand cosmic injustice aimed specifically at you. Marcus constantly reminded himself that his entire life was just a blip in eternity, his body just atoms borrowed from the universe. Compared to that scale, how quickly everything passes your pain, yes, but also your worries, your successes. It fosters acceptance.
So decomposition looks inward to analyze the pain. The view from above looks outward to contextualize it. But there was one more key Stoic reframe for adversity, wasn't there? Seeing it not just as something to endure, but as training.
Yes, this is crucial. The Stoics refused to view adversity, including physical hardship, illness, or pain, as purely negative. They completely flipped the script and saw these challenges as opportunities to build virtue.
Like exercise for the soul.
Exactly. Seneca is brilliant on this. He uses that powerful analogy of a military general. A good general doesn't assign his best, most capable soldiers to easy guard duty in a safe town. No. He sends his elite troops into the toughest, most dangerous parts of the battle.
Because that's where their strength is needed and where they can prove their skill and courage.
Precisely. Seneca argues that God, or fate, or the rational universe, however you conceive it, operates similarly. It sends the hardest challenges like illness, poverty, loss, demanding physical tasks, only to those individuals it deems strong enough, worthy enough to handle them. It's a sign of respect, in a way.
So encountering difficulty isn't a punishment, it's a test. A chance to demonstrate resilience.
Exactly. If your life was always perfectly smooth, if you never faced any physical discomfort, never had to push through pain or illness, you'd never develop the virtues of patience, courage, endurance, or resilience. Seneca even argued that excessive good fortune, a life without challenges, is actually real misfortune because it leaves you untested, weak, maybe even lazy and complacent.
It doesn't forge your character.
It doesn't. Therefore, physical suffering, whether it's a minor ache or a major illness, is presented as an exercise. It's resistance training for your character. It's your chance to practice courage, to cultivate patience, and most importantly, to reaffirm that the core of who you are, your rational, choosing mind, your volition, remains untouched and free, regardless of what's happening to the physical body. The body might be aching, it might be temporarily broken, but the mind retains its power to judge the situation rationally and choose a virtuous response. That's the ultimate expression of self-mastery.
Wow. Okay, so this whole deep dive really gives us a radically different way to think about our physical lives, doesn't it? The Stoic definition of being physically well isn't really measured by external things like your body fat percentage or how much you can lift or whether you ever get sick. It seems to be defined much more by your internal state, by rational self-control, by the consistent application of temperance to your physical existence.
That's a great summary. The body is definitely important. It's that preferred indifferent, the vessel. We have a rational duty to maintain it because it helps us live virtuously. But the ultimate goal isn't perfecting the vessel just for the sake of having a perfect vessel. The goal is to make sure the pilot, your reason, your volition, stays firmly in charge and is never overthrown by the crew.
And the crew being our appetites, our cravings, our emotional reactions, our fear of pain.
Exactly. Whether that's the craving for gourmet food that Musonius Rufus warned against, seeing gluttony as a failure of self-control, or the fear of physical discomfort that Marcus Aurelius taught us to manage through decomposition and the cosmic perspective. We learned that those intense negative emotions, the passions, are actually unhealthy judgments, not unavoidable reflexes, springing from those neutral first movements.
And Seneca reminded us that real happiness, eudaimonia, isn't just about chasing pleasant feelings and avoiding unpleasant ones. Which is interesting because so much of modern health and fitness culture is focused on maximizing pleasure, the pleasure of taste, the pleasure of looking good, the pleasure of athletic achievement, and minimizing discomfort at all costs.
Right. But the Stoic seeks reasonable health primarily to expand their capacity to act rationally and fulfill their duties in the world, not just to maximize pleasant sensations or achieve a certain aesthetic. It's function over feeling, in a sense.
So, thinking about the listener, what does all this mean for you tuning in today? We know Epictetus was really big on warning his students not to get lost in complex, advanced philosophical theories, the academic stuff, before they'd mastered the absolute basics, the necessary principles.
Yeah, his focus was relentlessly practical. How do you become immune to distress, anxiety, and being overwhelmed by passion? How do you become truly free inside?
So maybe here's a final provocative thought to consider, building on that. The Stoics saw health as a tool, a preferred indifferent that supports our freedom and our ability to live rationally. Take a moment to reflect. Is your current focus on physical optimization, whether it's biohacking, meticulously tracking every calorie, pursuing extreme fitness goals, is it genuinely moving you towards that core Stoic goal of freedom from anxiety and inner distress?
Or could it be, paradoxically, adding more layers of complexity, more things to worry about, more potential sources of fear? Is it actually making your happiness more dependent on things like achieving perfect body composition, maintaining peak performance indefinitely, or avoiding any hint of illness, things that are, at the end of the day, outside the complete control of your unimpeded volition?
If you find yourself chasing a preferred indifferent like health or fitness as if it were the ultimate good itself, you might inadvertently be building a cage of anxiety and dependency for yourself, rather than strengthening the true freedom of your mind. Something to definitely reflect on this week, that difference between health as a functional tool versus health as an ultimate goal.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Until next time.